Hello, everyone. Welcome to this first webinar of 2024, the first webinar organized by BalticWind.eu. My name is Krzysztof Bulski, and I would like to, well, first of all, give a warm welcome to our audience who joined our 2024 Outlook webinar for the Baltic Sea offshore wind industry, where we will discuss, first of all, the key takeaways from the past year, but what's even more important, the key challenges of 2024. We meet with you on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and on Twitter. And I would like to assure everyone who's joining us that we see your comments and questions. So please do engage in the discussion as we have quite interesting topics to discuss today and a very interesting and insightful mix of voices. And without further ado, I would like to introduce our esteemed panelists today, starting maybe with Barbara Glowacka, the member of cabinet of Commissioner for Energy, Kadri Simson. Barbara, welcome. It's great to have you with us today.
Hello, welcome.
Also with us today, Morten Helveg Petersen from the European Parliament, member of the European Parliament. Hello, it's a pleasure to have you with us today, Morten.
No, happy to be with you. Thanks so much for the invite.
We also have Lasma Livzeniece, the Executive Director of the Latvian Wind Energy Association. Lasma, it's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Hello, pleasure is all mine.
And Denis Kruse, the Deputy Chairman of the Executive Board of the Wind Industry and Hydrogen Association, WAB. Denis, hello and welcome.
Hello from North Germany. Nice to be here.
And last but certainly not least, Daniel Badman, CEO of the Swedish Wind Energy Association. Welcome, Daniel.
Many thanks, and thanks for the invite as well. Looking forward to this.
So the main goal of this webinar is to discuss the challenges, because that's what is most important. We had a very intense year. A lot has happened both in the regulatory part, but also in the development parts across Europe. But of course, we focus today on the region of the Baltic Sea. I think it would be nice if we could start with giving each of our panelists the moment to share their reflections on first of all, what from your point of view, from your perspective, from the perspective of your institution that you represent, what the main takeaways from this year are, and what actually what we bring into the new year from 2023, and also what you see as the main challenges and the main issues that the industry should discuss and how to move things forward in the path to achieving the goal of those 90 gigawatts that are ahead. So maybe we could start with the voice from the European Commission. Barbara, I will give you the floor.
Thank you very much. And indeed, it's great that we have an opportunity to discuss, because a lot has happened in 2023 as regards the development of renewables and the wind development in particular. I think what is remarkable is that we managed to put wind at the spotlight of the political agenda of the legislators. but also on minds and of everybody how important this is. And I think one of the key takeaway from this is that high level ambition for offshore wind is certainly possible. We just need to continue to keep the momentum and ensure that we focus the attention on the topic. It's key in the overall geopolitical strategic thinking of the Commission with the Repower EU, with our goal to make the EU more energy independent, and with potential that wind holds for in this key topic. So what we have seen is commitments from member states for higher ambition, for ground breaking sea basin goals. With Baltic Sea in particular, we have now commitment of 22.5 gigawatts by 2030 and 46.8 gigawatts by 2050. This is really remarkable, and we will see certainly member states taking a lot of action to make it happen. We have now a wind power package to bolster the growth and enable this goals to be implemented. We have significantly strengthened the legislative framework to benefit from speedier permitting, improved auction design. Here the keys is Renewable Energy Directive and Electricity Market Directive, which will all help to improve deployment of renewables and offshore wind in particular. Let's not forget about the EU Action Plan on Grids, which is key to ensure that we can connect all the farms to the shore. And importantly, we have also first pipeline of offshore projects that have been included in the list of projects of common interest and projects of mutual interest, including the Bornholm Energy Island and the Elwind projects in the Baltic Sea. So all very important developments, which all show significant attention and focus on wind and offshore energy in particular. We will continue this work throughout 2024. Now, I think the challenge is to implement all the ambition that we have put into development of wind and offshore wind in particular. And here the key focus of the Commission continues to be on enabling permitting. We know this is key. This continues to be a topic where we need to improve. And we will work with member states to ensure that what they have vowed to do via the legislation, so RED, and via the wind power package, we will help them implement. The big focus of our work is also on strengthening manufacturing. The Net Zero Industry Act is a key pillar and key element in this work, but it also shows the change of focus where we feel that it's not only about the deployment, it's also about helping the industry and ensuring energy security by enabling clean tech manufacturing in the EU. So this work will continue. We now also have the financing, which we announced with EIB on this in the European Wind Power Package, and we hope this will all bring clear results. And what I also personally put a lot of hope in is the offshore network development plan that was developed by SWEA under the 10E regulation that will allow us to strengthen the cooperation and ensure a better regional cooperation and hopefully more hybrid projects that Commission very much supports and wants to see more. Again, the 2024 will continue to give us key focus on renewables, offshore in particular, and we will continue until the end of the mandate to ensure that all these ambitious proposals that we set and goals that we set will be implemented as soon as possible. Thank you.
The goals are clearly ambitious, but I think, and I would like to take this moment to welcome our last but definitely not least participant of the debate, Giles Dickson. We are very happy to have the voice of the European wind industry, the CEO of WindEurope, with us. Hello, Giles. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Hello, Christoph. Apologies for my late arrival. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely, not a problem at all. We just started, and we're just going through the round some short statement from each of the panelists to set ground for the discussion, and maybe building on what Barbara has said. I think it would be good to hear now the voice of the lawmaker, of Morten. How does this look from your perspective?
Well, Barbara, she said it all, so I can be brief. I'd say in the big picture, I mean, there are so many positives out there, politically speaking. We're all emphasizing the importance of autonomy, of building out homegrown renewables, so to speak. So I'd say politically, there's a lot of goodwill surrounding offshore issues and renewables in general. Now, I think the negative side of it is that 23 has shown us clearly how huge challenges are within the industry. And we all know a lot of the reasons for this in terms of inflation and high interest rates and supply chain issues and what have you. So I'd say there's a lot of positives out there politically, commercially, a lot of opportunities out there. Negatives obviously being lack of speed, lack of implementation, and very serious and critical issues within industry. So I think that what we need to bring into 24 is the basic notion that this doesn't come for free, that we have to keep on pushing. We have to ensure implementation of these very ambitious goals, because we see a lack of final investment decisions. We see a lack of speed. So politically and regulatory, we need to keep pushing in order to ensure that we fulfill our ambitions. Because if we don't do this, my worry is that obviously we'll lose out on our 2030 climate objectives and this ramp up, which is just mind blowing. I mean, the urgency and the need for speed in this is just mind blowing. So politically, we really need to bear this in mind all through 24. Thanks.
And maybe this is a good moment to actually give the floor to Giles, because the need for speed is big, but also the need for made in Europe is also big. Giles, if you could just share your remarks, your perspective on what are the key takeaways from the past year that we bring to this new year that just started, and what are the expectations, what you see as the main challenges and hopes for 2024?
The most important takeaway from last year for offshore wind in the Baltic Sea is that things are looking up. So we've had a high level of political ambition for almost 2 years now. The 8 countries around the Baltic agreed back in 2022 that they would go from 3 gigawatts of offshore wind today to 23 gigawatts by the end of 2030. Last year, we saw a major increase in final investment decisions in offshore wind across the whole of Europe, 30 billion euros worth of new investments announced, which buys 9 gigawatts of new offshore wind in total. Some of those projects are in the Baltic Sea. We saw the first ever final investment decision for offshore wind in Poland last year. Poland should have its first offshore wind farms operating in just a few years' time. We saw the first auction in Lithuania last year, and they've just launched their second auction. Estonia will launch their first auction this year. Latvia want to do things as well. Denmark will auction 3 gigawatts of offshore wind around Bornholm this year, and Finland is currently running seabed lease auctions for significant volumes of capacity. So we are quite optimistic that if all of these countries stick to their ambitions, that we can deliver this 2030 gigawatt target for 2030. Germany, many of their projects are in the Baltic Sea, and they are proceeding with them. The one country that worries us slightly is Sweden. we don't see any visible signs of support from the public authorities, from the government. They were going to ask the transmission system operator to provide the grid connection. Now they've gone back on that. It's unclear how the grid connections will be built to any offshore wind farms in Sweden. There are some permits being awarded, but there's very little, if any, active support from the government there for wider political reasons. On the supply chain, on Friday this week, Vestas will lay the foundation stone of a new factory in Szczecin in Poland to build nacelles and hubs for offshore wind. There'll be a very big ceremony. The King and Queen of Denmark will be taking part, dignitaries on the Polish side as well. Vestas have just announced they'll build a second factory next to it, making blades for offshore wind turbines. This is extremely positive. A company has recently announced that in Rostock, they will start building a new factory to make platforms for the transmission converter stations that you need for the grid connections for offshore wind farms. Factories in Finland and Sweden that make the cables for the offshore wind farms are also being expanded. So we're confident also the supply chain will be able to deliver both for the Baltic and for the rest of Europe. So things are looking good.
So I think there was quite an important mention of Sweden, and maybe it's fair that I give the voice now to Daniel. Daniel, if you could share, maybe respond or share your perspective on how does the year 2024 look from the perspective of the Swedish Wind Energy Association and the Swedish market.
Many thanks. And I think, to me, 2023 was the year when not the wind industry, but the industry in broader sense, i.e. the energy-intense industry, were clearer than ever on the need of more electricity. And that shows the link between electricity production and competitiveness in a broader sense, in a much more direct way than we've seen before in Sweden. The Swedish, the whole sort of energy intense industry has stated that they need basically the amounts of more than 50% of today's electricity usage additional until 2030. So it's a massive build out of electricity that is needed in the coming 5, 6, 7 years. And the only viable option to do that large scale is wind energy, onshore and offshore. So I would say that is the first takeaway, that besides the already mentioned very serious and difficult geopolitical situation that we have right now, it's also clear that the real competitiveness is now driven by more electricity, driven by climate targets, but also by strong industry ambitions to become a stronger industry. And the link to more electricity is stronger than ever. So that would be my first takeaway, that there is a real, not only politically driven demand, but there's a real substantial demand on more electricity, green electricity. 2023 on the Swedish side is also the year when, we do not have an auction system, as you know. We have a market-based system also for offshore. 2023 is also the year when the wind industry said that we are ready to invest in Sweden. There are now totally 16 projects waiting for the governmental permit. 16 projects has applied, not only in the Baltic Sea, but around the Swedish coast. Some of these are of course in the Baltic Sea, but all in all 16 projects waiting for governmental decisions to get the permits needed to be able to then in the next step take investments decisions. We're talking about the level of total electricity production at the scale of the total electricity use in Sweden right now, i.e. somewhere between 25,000 and 30,000 megawatts. So from my view, from a market perspective, I think this is the big thing in 2023, where we see that there is a real good match, basically, between industry needs and then we're talking energy-intense industry and electricity production build-out potential and in interests in investments. Then I fully agree with Giles that we have a little bit of a different, given that we do not have the auction system and given that we have a little bit of a different discussion in Sweden right now, we still lack a little bit of the sense of urgency from the Swedish policymakers right now, saying this needs to be done and it needs to be done fast. Permissions needs to be granted and so forth to secure that the investments are possible to realize. Then I would just also like to underline what Giles said on the broader scale of the value chain. The orders that has been given thanks to the growing markets in the North Sea in particular, to Swedish cable manufacturers and electronics manufacturers, and especially Hitachi in a small city of Ludvika in the middle of Sweden, is the ever largest export deal that has been given to a Swedish company, which is an extremely interesting and inspiring example of how the growing renewable markets create job also in a country that today do not have the own facilities of production of wind turbines, showing that the value chain is strong in Europe and of course can be made in Europe is strong also in the broader sense. Then we will come back to some challenges and so forth, but I think the more hands-on thing, if we look at from a project development point of view, is of course how do we increase cooperation with defense forces. It's never been more urgent to be successful there, and I think Sweden, as a case, is looking a lot into what we can learn from other NATO countries, given that we are hopefully soon to be members of NATO. But that would be my short insight, saying that there is really the real substantial and not only politically driven electricity demand has never been more articulated than it is right now on the Swedish market.
And as we now draw a circle around the Baltic Sea, I would like to give the voice to Lasma. If you could share the Latvian perspective on the 2024 challenges.
Thank you. Well, I'll start with 2023 first. Yeah, so I do agree that in general, the offshore scene or the offshore industry is feeling upbeat. We are still a bit, kind of lagging behind everybody else in Latvia, and that's because the government is giving the priority to onshore, simply because onshore would fulfill our consumption needs, whereas offshore would be more for exports. But nevertheless, we will be pushing because we see that it's important. It will also provide a significant contribution to Europe's transition to green energy. So, but I do want to stress and relate to what Daniel said. So it's security issue, the security aspect of offshore wind, because the geopolitics have shown that we live next to a very dangerous and aggressive neighbor, and our critical infrastructure needs to be taken care of, needs to have a very good cooperation when it comes to surveillance, when it comes to cybersecurity. So these are extremely, extremely important aspects. And as we are thinking about, reinforcing the existing infrastructure and building new one in the Baltic Sea, this will become even more important topic. So definitely this is something that it will need to be looked at also and continue to be looked at throughout the following years, not only this year, but also, up until things have settled, I guess. Yes, that would be kind of my short takeaway from last year and what's expected this year.
And as we have actually seen Germany return to some quite ambitious plans regarding offshore recently. I think the final warm-up perspective here from Dennis will also be very interesting. Dennis, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, from the German perspective, looking back into 2023, Germany ramps up and accelerates again the implementation of offshore wind energy. And to my knowledge, we had here the biggest tender worldwide for offshore wind energy sites in one step in Germany, with 4 sites and in total 7 gigawatt capacity that was carried out here. And I think you heard of the high revenues we got for these sites we saw. And by the way, related to the capacity, the highest amount was reached in the Baltic Sea for this site, with about 2 billion euro for 1,000 megawatt from Total Energies. And so companies are able and willing to pay so much money to enter the German market. But however, this can also put pressure on the German market, and in particular on the suppliers, because after all, this money has to be earned at some point. Regarding the construction activities in Germany, last year, the Arcadis Ost offshore wind farm from Parkwind was completed in the second half of the year. And we see there 27 wind turbines from Vestas, with each 9.5 megawatt, so with 247 megawatt in all, after all. And within this project, Parkwind, Heerema Marine Contractors, investors developed a new technology for the swimming installation of offshore wind turbines in Arcadis Ost. And that is unique in the world. So no interaction with the seabed regarding complex soil conditions and very deep waters, and fast installation were the result of this installation. Nowadays, we have 1,350 megawatts total in the German Baltic Sea, with about 260 wind turbines. And what are the most promising developments regarding 2024 in the Baltic Eagle project from Iberdrola? We will see the installation. The foundations were already installed, and the complete installation will be ended within this year. And within this project, we will see 50 wind turbines, also from Vestas, with altogether 476 megawatt. And with the projects to come until 2030, regarding also Windanker, Gennaker, and the tendered site, it will be more than 400 wind turbines with a capacity of more than 4,000 megawatt in the German Baltic Sea. So regarding the challenges, we already talked about the ambitious goals, and you might know that in Germany we want to reach 30 gigawatt in 2030 and 70 gigawatt in 2045, and we will really have challenging times in front of us to install more than 6 gigawatt in 2029 and more than 9 gigawatt in 2030. And I think we will talk later about the infrastructure that will be needed for this.
Thank you very much, Dennis, for this insightful voice. We will, of course, discuss the speed and also the regulatory framework in a moment. But I would like to now ask everyone to reflect on an issue that has been sort of casting a shadow over anything that's happening over the last year. And that is the ongoing Russian aggression in Ukraine, which also transforms into real security threats for infrastructure. And maybe it would be interesting to hear the Swedish and the Latvian perspective on this. Daniel or Lasma, would you like to share your perspective on the key issues that are connected with the security of infrastructure build out in your countries?
Yes, thank you. As for Latvia, absolutely, this is the threat we live with every day, having Russia as a neighbor. And I mean, now at least from the TSO's perspective, so we are going forward with the desynchronization from the Brel ring, which means we will be synchronized with the continental Europe. These plans have sped up quite a bit now. This is to be done by 2025. But of course, there is a strong cooperation between the Baltic TSOs on a coordinated action on how to secure and defend the infrastructure. But as I said, this is still quite a bit of challenge, and it needs a coordinated action, not only between the three Baltic states, but in general the Baltic Sea region. Also, when it comes to raiders, for example, now Latvia is running into the issue. I mean, because we were a bit slower in picking up on things, so we're only now starting to realize, okay, so there are quite a lot of raiders and they don't really coexist well with wind turbines. So what do we do about it? So we need this experience. I know that there are, plenty of solutions out there, but we want to learn from these experiences, and it's extremely crucial.
And I also think that the regional cooperation here is quite important. But Daniel, you wanted to add something.
No, on the same note, and maybe digging a little bit even deeper in the importance of exchange of experiences with regards to technological solutions, because I think that is one of the key aspects to build trust between the offshore wind sector and the defense interests. And obviously, for natural reasons, on the Swedish end, we do not have we have a very limited build out on offshore right now. The knowledge gap is rather big, and this is something that we definitely need more support and also to utilize the ongoing projects, as Lasma mentioned as well, on the Swedish market, on what technology works, and in the end, it is about that the build out on offshore and onshore wind will increase. Not only from a sort of geopolitical, we do not need more fuels level, because that is, of course, a very important part of it. We do not need the dependency on fuels from other countries, but also this very technological solutions that build trust within the armed forces. I think that will be one of the key aspects, and we have good hopes that the NATO process will be helpful on the Swedish end here. And I know perhaps Giles, you have good experiences from the work that you do together with NATO, very hands-on, and I think sharing that also in the Baltic area will be crucial.
Giles, if you would like to.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's very encouraging that both NATO and the European Defence Agency are now taking these issues very seriously indeed and dedicating significant resources to it now. Yeah, and this is not just about doing studies and thinking about the issues, it's about engaging operationally as well. And that work has started, and it's very good. On radar that Lasma has mentioned, there is good practice across the region. Estonia is now upgrading the radar technology that they have in all of their military and civil aviation radar installations. And this is enabling Estonia to build much more onshore wind than they used to be able to, because it's opening up much more of their territory for onshore wind farms. There are always minimum distance rules in every country between onshore and offshore wind farms and radar installations. These used to be quite high distances in Estonia. They're now much lower, so we can build onshore wind. We used to be able to only build it in, I think, 11% of Estonian territory. Now it's 60%, and Estonia this year, on the back of that, will be building 300 megawatts of onshore wind, next year 400 or 500 megawatts. This is a major step forward, and it's thanks to developments in radar technology which make it much easier for wind to coexist with military radar, both onshore and offshore. Final brief observation: on the 10th of April, the Lithuanian government are hosting a Baltic Energy Security Summit in Vilnius for the 8 energy ministers from the region, and security of the offshore energy infrastructure will be one of the key themes at that summit.
Well, when we speak about security, I think it's also important to mention the big wave. I think it's a justified term of populism directed against the European Green Deal. And here I would like to ask Morten on your perspective, especially that we are looking, this is an election year, so we are looking at seeing a new parliament soon. How to ensure that actually the offshore wind energy does not fall victim to this rising wave of populism?
Well, I think the positive side of this is that offshore might be one of the areas least affected by some of these tendencies in terms of NIMBYism or skepticism or what have you. I think it's widely recognized, obviously, with the benefits, and for sure we have to be very serious on coexistence issues, on getting it right in terms of maritime spatial planning and all these issues, adding with the infrastructure worries that was just mentioned and discussed. But I'd say in the big picture, it seems to me that there would be quite a universal acceptance of offshore being one of the areas where we have common interest in terms of pushing this. So we have to address these concerns. We have to take them seriously, but I think there are many more or other issues that are more affected by some of these tendencies than necessarily in offshore issues. Having said that, what we have to strive for and work with is that to ensure a political acceptance of offshore issues that is not only within the coastal states, be it the Baltics or the northern sea countries, but ensuring that people widely see the benefits of how to use all these renewables being generated in the Baltic Sea or North Sea or wherever, that made of use in a wider area, say it being hydrogen or PTX or what have you, also for non-coastal states. So I think that's an important political prerequisite for ensuring that we can maintain speed in implementing all these various goals that we do have. Thanks.
Thank you very much for this, Morten. I think that would be interesting to discuss the implementation now, and because there are many threats, but we have to also focus on building and implementation. And one of the key topics that I think we should discuss is the EU action plan for grids. And here I would like to direct the question at Barbara. What the Commission sees as the key initiatives to make it work in this year.
Thank you very much for the question. If you allow me, let me put it in a wider perspective, because we have a lot of work in front of us before the end of this college. EU action plan for grids, indeed very important. We have also the work on the wind power action plan. We have the work on implementation of the renewable energy directive. All this comes together, and all this work is interconnected, but it means a very substantive groundwork with the member states. There will be a lot on them to implement the rules. The rules are extremely ambitious, including on permitting, including on proof auction design. And the Commission takes now the priority to use the NACP process to help member states to do it as effectively and as quickly as possible. We promise guidance, we promise specific tools to work with member states. And this is really, and I want to stress this, an extreme priority for us. To ensure that all what we have promised is implemented as quickly as possible by the end of the mandate. The work continues in the strands of, as you mentioned, the grids development, which are really key to ensure that we can deploy the energy that we promised to develop, but equally on the development. And in all this work as well, we're focusing as well on the manufacturing. Here, the Net Zero Industry Act is key. We are continuing the discussions among the co-legislators on the file, and the Commission, as we promised in the Wind Power Action Plan, is striving for as ambitious approach as possible. So we will have a lot of work in this last year to ensure that all those pledges that we made will be delivered. Thank you.
I don't know if Giles would like to add something to this voice from the point of view of the industry.
The wind power package, the wind power action plan that Barbara has just talked about is an absolute game changer, and well done to the Commission. You've done a fantastic job here. It identifies 15 specific actions that can be taken immediately to help accelerate the build out of wind energy in Europe, onshore and offshore, and the strengthening of Europe's wind energy supply chain. Doesn't involve waiting for new legislation, let alone trying to agree the new legislation. It's immediate action using existing legal tools. The Grid Action Plan then came alongside that. Also, great initiative from the Commission, really important actions, and it's great that the Commission are moving now under this mandate so quickly to implement both the Wind Power Action Plan and the Grids Action Plan. Incidentally, on the Wind Power Action Plan, it's not just about the action plan. There's also the clear commitment that 26 of the 27 member states have now given by signing the European Wind Charter to implement all of the actions that fall to them under the Wind Power Action Plan. Back briefly to the Grids Action Plan, one key point is the urgent need to define a cost-sharing formula to apply to cross-border grid infrastructure, whether this is pure interconnectors that are being built between countries in the Baltic Sea, like the new cable that Germany wants to build to Estonia for the import of electricity that will be generated from offshore wind farms, for example, in Estonia and the other Baltic states to Germany, whether it's for the hybrid offshore wind farms that may be built around the Baltic, for example, the Elwind project, the joint Estonia-Latvia offshore wind farm, which will have a cable to both countries, any joint project that Lithuania and the new Polish government may wish to develop, and any other hybrid projects elsewhere. These can only proceed when there's a very clear definition of how to share the costs and the benefits between the different countries involved. And it's excellent that the Commission are now working hard on this, treating it as a top priority. We cannot agree this cost-sharing formula quickly enough. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Giles. And I would like to direct one question before we actually get into the questions and comments from our audience. I would like to remind the audience that all questions that you post on LinkedIn or on YouTube or Twitter, aka X, are visible to us. So we see them coming in, and we will go over to those in a moment. But I have one more question that I would like to address at Dennis, because we see that the plans in Germany are becoming ambitious, and from this perspective of so much happening, how do you see I have two questions actually. First one is, how do you see the importance of the regional cooperation with regional partners, but also how important is the debate on skills. Just to remind everyone, we just had the European Year of Skills, and there was much discussed about the need for a skilled workforce that is not yet available. A small remark, I checked, we as Baltic Wind receive a number of press releases from different companies on different topics daily. I checked that we have in our database from 2023, we have dozens of announcements of different projects and mentioning how many new jobs they will create. So the more and more jobs are being created, which is amazing. But then I run a different check on the same database, our email boxes where we receive press releases. If there is any actually talking about some solution that to the problem of not enough skilled workers, and I didn't find any that would be specifically directed at this topic. So I think it's also interesting to ask. Is the debate already happening? Is this something that you see as an important issue? So Dennis, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. Regarding your first question, the regional cooperation, yes, that is absolutely crucial. We see that in the projects as well in the North Sea as in the Baltic Sea. And regarding these ambitious goals we have in Germany and in Europe, I think we all don't want to see that the construction of all these parts we need will take place in another continent. So yes, absolutely, regional cooperation is crucial. Regarding the skills, the education, like other sectors, we are also noticing that the shortage of skilled labors is increasing, and relying on the labor market is not enough. So we can't hope that there will be somewhere there will appear some workers. We have to offer attractive jobs and take care of training and further education for ourselves. And there are already a lot of activities in Germany in this area. However, we are seeing a demographic change in which the percentage of young people in the labor market is decreasing, and it is becoming increasingly difficult to find well-trained specialists. And I think that is not only the case in Germany. So we will also have to rely on skilled labor from other countries. And fortunately, the wind energy sector has always been a very, very international. So the language barrier is not such a big challenge. And in addition, it is, of course, necessary to organize processes from efficiently in order to reduce personnel costs and make processes not only more efficient, but also more secure. We already talked about the topics like cybersecurity and so on.
Thank you, Dennis. And as promised, there are questions. And talking about supply chains and also the challenge to focus on as much as possible being made in Europe. We have a question from across the pond. And that is a question about the opportunity for American companies, which we know are also active in the European markets and in the Baltic Sea region. So what is the opportunity for companies, maybe to look broader, not only for American companies, but for companies outside of Europe, and how can they play a role that is helping in this effort? I don't know who would like to take this question. I'm looking at Giles, but this is a question that of course everyone is free to address.
Very happy to start the answers to this question. American companies are already heavily involved in the build out of offshore wind in Europe. notably General Electric. They are one of the 3 European-based manufacturers of offshore wind turbines. Most of their factories are in France. They have sites elsewhere, and they're producing equipment that's being used for offshore wind farms all around Europe. They're currently providing the turbines for the largest offshore wind farm in Europe in the middle of the North Sea at the Dogger Bank. They've provided equipment also for offshore wind farms in Germany and elsewhere. And many other US companies are involved in this effort as well. And we regard this as a broader transatlantic supply chain, and there's a very good interchange between Europe and North America on the technology. We're trying to work towards common standards in certain aspects of the equipment and how it is deployed as well. It really is excellent collaboration, and Barbara may wish to add that this is something offshore wind has featured strongly in the EU's energy dialogue with the US as well.
Yes, and indeed, I'm happy to add on this. As you know, we have very strong cooperation with the US. We have ongoing energy dialogues, and next one coming up in March already. And as Giles said, the build-up of global clean tech supply chains is part of that discussion. Last year, we had also a dedicated event to renewables and offshore wind in particular during the dialogue we had last year in Washington. And we have very much a common goal with the US to strengthen the clean tech manufacturing globally. The idea is not only to everybody building on their own country, but to strengthen the supply chains on the global level to ensure we are not supplying just from one region or from one country, which there is this risk currently, but ensuring a global production that we can all rely on in case of need. So this is very much part of our discussions with our American partners. As Giles said, this concerns the standards. This concerns strengthening of cooperation, of how to work together on building up this supply chains across the globe. Thank you.
Perhaps a short addition concerning the concrete services of this named company, Berger Geosciences. I just had a look at the internet, and they are, beside other things, they are doing pre-installation planning and site investigation surveys, and that are especially topics that we will need here in Germany. So we don't have enough companies to carry out these works, and so from every country all over the world, all other companies are really welcomed to support us here.
I couldn't be more happier to see that Baltic Wind EU is connecting businesses in this way. And we have one more question from actually outside the EU, but from a very close. Sorry, that was this one from a very close neighbor, and I think this is a great question also for Morten. Do you think industrial reality, supply chain, vessel availability support political ambitions? And that's a question from Murat Durak from the Turkish Offshore Wind Energy Association.
So clearly, given the need for speed and the ramp up needed in order to fulfill our targets, I mean, all parts of supply chains and infrastructure facilities are really challenged in meeting all these requirements. So I guess the very short answer to this excellent question is no. I mean, we see ports all over the Baltics and North Sea having to really gear up their facilities. In my own home country, Denmark, we see the ports really trying to ramp up also in terms of facilitating the entire supply chain. So, which include vessels and all these various types of say equipment or facilities in order to ramp up. So this is a very serious challenge that we face. We see also luckily some ambitious projects in terms of building out ports in order to cater to increased size of windmills and testing facilities and what have you, because these are all extremely important parts of this, say, industrial reality. So a lot of stuff luckily is going on, but we need to move faster if we are to reach our objectives.
Giles, would you like to add something here?
Very briefly, we are confident that the supply chain is now expanding at a sufficient pace in Europe to support the political ambitions. By that, I mean the new manufacturing facilities for offshore turbines, foundations, substations, substation foundations, and towers. Where we still have challenges is in a vessel availability, as you have highlighted, Murat. There are new installation vessels coming online, but not enough of them and not quickly enough. And we still need to accelerate the pace of investments in new port infrastructure, as Morten has said. It is unfortunate that Poland is now preparing to build its first offshore wind farm, but they don't actually have a port ready for the marshalling and conveyance of the equipment. So they're having to use a port facility on Bornholm Island. They are now rapidly investing in the Świnoujście port just north of Szczecin, and we're hoping that will be a major hub for subsequent projects in Poland. And there are plans afoot in Klaipėda and Liepāja and other ports around the Baltic, but we really need to accelerate the pace of investments here in port infrastructure.
So if you allow, this is the last question that I would like to bring to the floor from Martin Petersen. Due to increased risk for logistical solutions in the world, will more of the production of wind power be moved back to Europe from Asia? This is a question, again, directed at everyone, but maybe Giles, you would like to address this first.
This is a trend that in some ways is starting already. The president of the European Commission, and I hope Barbara will say something on this as well, in her State of the Union speech last year, said very clearly that the future of clean tech in Europe must be made in Europe. And the Commission in the Wind Power Package, Wind Power Action Plan, and now also in the European Wind Charter that nearly all the member states have endorsed, the EU is very clear that the build out of onshore and offshore wind in Europe must be made in Europe. We do have two key dependencies on China at the moment for certain materials and components, and one is the rare earths and the permanent magnets that are used in many wind turbines. We have an almost 99% dependency on China there. And the other big dependency is on the glass fiber rovings. That's the raw material that is then processed into glass fiber, which is then used for the manufacturing of blades. Blades are made in Europe, by which we mean wider Europe. Turkey is a significant part of the European wind energy supply chain, and so is the UK. And it's important we always take a wider European view of the European offshore wind supply chain and not just an exclusively EU view. The blades are made in wider Europe. The glass fiber fabrics are often produced in wider Europe as well, but the raw materials are coming from China. And we need to break down these dependencies, and the EU's new Critical Raw Materials Act that has now been agreed is a significant step forward on that.
I'm happy if we still have a few minutes to build up on what Giles said. because the question touches on one of the key policies that we see developed now in the EU. What we've seen with what's happening on the gas markets following the invasion of Russia into Ukraine is manipulation that we exposed ourselves to because of too high dependency. And that made us think broader, because this is obviously not something that is confined to gas markets. This is something that we can be exposed anywhere in terms of anything that we are dependent on currently. Together with our thinking of developing homegrown energy production, which is focused on renewables, because we can develop that in Europe. It's also the thinking that we cannot tie ourselves with this development to increase dependency on one particular country that we would be required to supply from. As Giles said, we have great manufacturing of wind in Europe, but we see that if we do not support what we have, we risk of losing it. So there have been a big announcement, as Giles pointed out, made by the President of the Commission in the State of the Union address. And from then on, we've seen a number of actions developing very quickly at record speed. We proposed the European Wind Action Plan. This is really a response on how to strengthen not only the deployment, but also manufacturing of wind in the EU. Giles mentions there's a wind charter where we work with member states hand in hand to ensure the commitment that we can give to manufacturing in Europe to really increase the incentives and give a viable signal to companies that we are supporting the strengthening of manufacturing in the EU, and we will continue to support that with the policies planned and presented in the Wind Action Plan and the Wind Charter. And then we've seen this moving on with the Net Zero Industry Act that we propose to strengthen even more. Of course, the tricky bit is how do we balance affordable deployment with strengthened manufacturing in the EU. For wind, maybe this is not direct concern because we have good manufacturing base in the EU, but when you look at others like solar, this is not the case. And overall, this plays consideration into development of the net zero and the discussions today. But from our side, the Commission is doing everything we can to convince member states that deployment of renewables cannot mean increasing dependencies, but on the contrary, deployment of renewables in the EU must mean also benefit for our industry and strengthening of manufacturing. And as well, this means addressing the key dependency that we have today. So the work on critical raw materials that we have done, we hope it will help as well. But the discussion continues. I said, these are only the first stepping stones. We'll see how to move from there. It will be, of course, one of the key priorities, I suspect, of the new college when they come in to see how to work and continue this work further. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barbara. I don't know if there's any more voices. Please.
Yeah, I know we're short on time, but I think the mentioning of the rare earth materials and the rare earth metals showcase also the interlinkages between different industry sectors in a very well way. I mean, coming from a mining country, we know that there are some of these materials up in the northern parts of Sweden. To be able to extract them, massive build-outs of renewable electricity is needed. So there is a very direct link between that, making that happen, and also making the European value chain stronger in the industry as such. We need to do exactly as what Barbara said. We need to do both the Critical Raw Materials Act and the EU Wind Power Package, and they are interdependent. I think that's an important point to make, and they're both as urgent. So I think it is. I just want to underline also what Giles said, that the role that the European Commission has in pushing member states forward in permitting processes, being really taking the role, as you said, Barbara, to push this hard forward, is extremely valuable from the industry point of view, both with regards to, for instance, then rare earth materials and wind power development, and that they really are intertwined. You can't separate these two, and I think the northern part of Sweden is a good example of that. So I just wanted to give that as an example of how everything connects, basically.
Thank you very much, Daniel, and thank you, everyone. What will be the main takeaway from me from today's discussion is the need and the power of cooperation between both EU level and regional level, but also, as you, Daniel, now mentioned, across other industries, because the wind energy industry is not alone in this process. It's all interconnected, and to achieve this speed and also this independency of the sector, I think that there is a need to be connected and discuss. So I'm happy that we could meet today and connect both the regional discussion to the broader European perspective, because I think this is a very, very important point. I would like to thank our audience for participating and following the discussion, and also apologize that we were not able to take all the questions that were posted on various angles of the discussion. So to all our distinguished speakers, thank you very much for your time today, for all this useful insights, and we look forward to continuing the discussions. And last but not least, I would like to invite everyone who is interested also in exploring the topic deeper. There is a series of interviews on balticwind.eu under the keyword Outlook with Giles is one of the people we interviewed. There is a series of interviews with key stakeholders about expectations and challenges of this upcoming year. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.